Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Crystal Jimerson.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Understanding the Differences in Population Estimates and Projections. I'm Crystal Jimerson, a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Exploring the Diversity of Census Bureau Data webinar series. This new series, created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau, is meant to assist the novice to intermediate data user. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speakers, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you've found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring the Q&A panel, and as time allows, we will answer your question directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenters to respond to during the webinar. If we do not get to all questions with a response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, Pam Sarte and Lacey Lofton. Thanks again for being here today. Pam, you may begin.
Thanks, Crystal. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pamela Sardi, and I'm a demographer in the Estimates and Projections area in the Population Division of the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm happy to be with you today to speak about our population estimates and projections. I'm joined today by my colleague, Lacey Lofton, from the Data Dissemination and Training Branch. Here's a screenshot of the U.S. and world population clock on the Census Bureau's webpage. It reflects estimates made by my area and the International Programs area in the Population Division. The pop clock is like an odometer on an older car, except that instead of showing distance traveled, it's a running display of our growing population. Did you know that the U.S. population is now estimated to be over 336 million people, and that there are an estimated 8 billion people in the world? Here are images of a Tableau visualization from the Census Bureau's 2023 National Population Projections. It displays differences in the age and sex distribution of the U.S. population estimates from 2022 and the projected population in 2060. These are commonly known as population pyramids, and they feature population along the x-axis by age up the y-axis. On these, each of the bins represents a 5-year age group, and importantly, males are on the left and females are on the right. We can see that in the coming decades, the U.S. is expected to shift from a youth-dependent population, evident by these wider bars for the younger ages, to an elderly-dependent population. Then you can see how those wider bars have moved up to these older ages, indicating larger numbers of older people and smaller numbers of younger people. And according to our area's data, by 2029, older adults are projected to outnumber children for the first time in our nation's history. In today's session, I will define what we mean by population estimates and projections. I'll describe why we disseminate estimates and projections, and I'll summarize the subject content and geography of our data. Then I'll discuss the methods we use to make the estimates and projections and how accurate the estimates are when compared with decennial censuses. I'll share our product release schedule, and I'll show you where you can go to access population estimates and projections. Then I'll point you to resources in my area where you can learn more about our work. And lastly, I'll try to answer any questions you may have. So what do we mean by the term estimates? When we use the term estimates, we're referring to the official measures of population and housing units between censuses. The estimates start from the date of the previous decennial census and build off the census data, or a combination of data sources, for April 1st of the decennial year. This starting point is referred to as our estimates base. Later in the presentation, I'll describe our blended base approach, which was first implemented to develop the vintage 2021 estimates. The estimates are produced using primarily administrative records data on components of change, such as births, deaths, and migration. Typically, the estimates are for prior dates, although we do disseminate some short-term projections. The estimates are usually produced with annual data for July 1st each year, but include monthly estimates for the nation. The vintage 2023 estimates contain data for April 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2023. We disseminate population estimates for important reasons. The main reason is that we are federally mandated to do so to the extent feasible. According to Title 13 of the U.S. Code, estimates for states, counties, and sub-county places with population of 50,000 or greater need to be published every year between the censuses. Estimates for other governmental units need to be published at least every other year, although we put those out annually as well. The estimates are used in a lot of important ways, such as for allocation of federal funding and program planning in both the public and private sectors. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the estimates were used to allocate over $200 billion to states and cities for the 2020 CARES Act and the 2021 American Rescue Plan. In addition, the estimates are used as controls for other federal surveys, including the Current Population Survey and the American Community Survey. This means the surveys adjust their data so that certain totals match the PEP estimates to reduce the variance and potential bias caused by differential coverage of population groups in the sample. For example, the American Community Survey uses PEP estimates as controls, so their one-year estimates for larger areas are consistent with our official estimates. You'll see this when you're using data.census.gov. If you see 5 asterisks in the margins of error column, that's an indication that the estimate has used PEP estimates as a control. Again, our most current estimates are as of July 1st, 2023, and we have historical estimates extending back to 1900 for some areas. Data releases occur annually for over 80,000 areas in the U.S. and Puerto Rico. This table summarizes all of our estimate products by geography and type. The levels of available estimate geography are listed in the columns across the top, and the available demographic types of estimates are listed in the rows down the side. Reviewing the table, we see that total resident population estimates are disseminated for the U.S., states, metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas, counties, cities and towns, and for Puerto Rico and its municipios. Components of change, that is, births, deaths, and net migration, are disseminated for all areas except cities and towns and municipios. Age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin characteristics estimates are disseminated for all areas except cities and towns. Note that characteristics estimates for Puerto Rico are provided only by age and sex. Vintage 2023 represented the first population estimates data release for metropolitan, micropolitan, and related statistical areas by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, and by single year of age, 0 to 84 and 85 plus, for counties, municipios, and metropolitan, micropolitan, and related statistical areas. Monthly estimates for what we call 5 estimates universes are disseminated for the U.S. only. The universes are the resident population plus armed forces overseas, the civilian population, the civilian non-institutionalized population, and the household population. The group quarters, or GQ population, includes all people living in group quarters instead of housing units. GQs are places where people live or stay in a group living arrangement that is owned or managed by an entity or organization providing housing or services for the residents. For example, we have institutional group quarters like correctional facilities and assisted living facilities, and non-institutional group quarters like university student housing and military quarters. We disseminate these by demographic characteristics for the U.S. and total population for states and counties. Housing unit estimates are disseminated for the U.S., states, and counties. Now let's talk a little bit about our population estimates methodology. For population estimates at the county level of geography and above, the Population Estimates Program utilizes the cohort component method to measure population changes since the last census through the use of a variety of administrative records and survey data on births, deaths, and migration, which in demography we refer to as the components of population change. That is, for a given geography, the only way a population can change is for babies to be born, people to die, or people to move in or out. Some of our data sources for this method include the National Center for Health Statistics, the Internal Revenue Service, the Social Security Administration, the Defense Manpower Data Center, and survey data from the American Community Survey and Puerto Rico Community Survey. We also work closely with state demographers and other population specialists through our partnership group, the Federal State Cooperative for Population Estimates, or FSCPE. The population base generally represents the date of the last decennial census. So for our current series of estimates, we begin with the April 1st, 2020 population, which represents a combination of data from the 2020 census and other sources. Then we add how many births have occurred, subtract how many deaths have occurred, add the population that has moved into a geography, subtract the population that has moved out, and that gets us the population estimate for the next point in our time series, at which point we repeat the process. Delays to 2020 census input data availability resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic have introduced challenges for the production of our estimates this decade, starting with the vintage 2021 estimates, especially in terms of developing the April 1st, 2020 base to build our estimates from. As a result, the vintage 2021, vintage 2022, and vintage 2023 series were developed from a blended base for April 1st, 2020, which integrates the results of the 2020 census, the 2020 demographic analysis estimates, and the vintage 2020 estimates series. Therefore, there may be differences between these April 1st, 2020 estimates and the results released from the 2020 census. In this graphic, you can see at a high level the sources used to create various details of the April 1st, 2020 population estimates base at the national, state, and county level in our latest iteration of the blended base, the one used for the vintage 2023 estimates. I won't go into great detail about our blended base approach in this presentation, but we hosted a webinar last year explaining these method changes, and I recommend you check out the recording on the Census Academy's webpage. We're currently scheduling an additional webinar on our blended base methodology to be hosted later this year. Our estimates of housing units are also produced with a component-based method that starts with the most recent decennial census and uses a variety of survey and administrative data to estimate change in the housing stock, specifically in terms of building permits, estimates of non-permitted construction, mobile home shipments, and estimates of housing loss. Data sources include the Building Permit Survey, Survey of Construction, Manufactured Home Survey, American Community Survey, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency individual records on requests for disaster assistance. We can also incorporate data provided by our partners in the FSCPE if they have alternative housing component data, such as local building permits, certificates of occupancy, housing conversions, and more. We use 2020 Census housing unit counts for our housing unit base. These counts are invariant, which means that in the context of the Census Bureau's disclosure avoidance system, they do not have differentially private noise infused into them. And finally, for sub-county geographies like cities and towns, we have a separate approach known as the distributive housing unit method, whereby the estimates are developed by distributing the county population estimates to each place within the county based on the place's ratio of household population to the total housing units. That process is depicted here. To get the initial household population estimate, we multiply the housing unit estimate by the ratio of household population from the 2020 census to the housing units from the 2020 census. Then that household population estimate is multiplied by a county household adjustment, or a rake factor, which ensures these estimates are consistent with the total county population in the blended base, and add that to an estimate of the population in group quarters to get the total resident population. Input data for housing unit estimates come from the Census Bureau's Building Permit Survey, the Survey of Construction, the Manufactured Home Survey, and from FSCPE members. You saw on the previous slide how we derive our housing unit estimate. Meanwhile, our household and group quarters base populations are drawn from the results of the 2020 census with a small amount of differentially private noise infused into them to protect the confidentiality of respondents as per the Census Bureau's disclosure avoidance guidelines. Our general methodological approach each year is to revise our entire time series of estimates beginning at the date of the last census and up to the vintage year. For example, our latest estimates, the Vintage 2023 series, include data for April 1st, 2020 and July 1st, 2020 through July 1st, 2023. And these estimates supersede the estimates we published last year in the Vintage 2022 series. From vintage to vintage, there are three types of updates we may incorporate into the time series. First, the base population is updated each year to reflect legal boundary changes or other geographic updates. It may also be updated due to the outcomes of official census programs such as count question resolution or changes to the method of how we estimate the base population. Then, as more recent or complete data become available, such as births or deaths, or the components we use for our housing unit estimates, we use those to update the estimates of the components of change. We may also revise the methods of how we estimate the various components. What you'll see is that data updates are more likely to affect the estimates for the most recent years of the time series, while method revisions generally affect the series cumulatively from the census date forward. Finally, We may improve our method of tying all the components together and generating the estimates. This type of change also affects the series from the census date forward. So how accurate are the estimates? Population and housing unit estimates are made at the end of the decade without the knowledge of the results of the census. They're made with the estimates methodology we used during the decade and extend to April 1st of the census year. We compare these estimates with the census results to assess the accuracy of the estimates using a wide array of metrics that help us to understand the differences, validate our methodological decisions, and draw conclusions about the quality of our estimates. Here's a summary of some basic comparisons of estimates against the last two censuses. Averages of the absolute values of the differences between the estimates and census results are shown. We take the census minus the estimate, divide by the estimate, and multiply by 100 to get a percent difference for each area. In general, the larger the area, the closer our estimates come to the census. Of course, when we interpret these data, we need to remember that errors can occur both in the beginning and ending census and also in our estimation procedures, the data we collect from administrative sources and in our estimation models. For the nation, the percent difference went up from 0.1% in 2010 to 0.6% in 2020, but both differences are relatively small. In 2020, the census came in about 2 million more than our estimate. At the state level, the respective average absolute differences were 1% in 2010 and 1.2% in 2020. For counties, the absolute average differences were 3.1% in 2010 and 2.9% in 2020. We have a project we call Estimates Evaluation, which occurs every decade when the results of the census become available. That project closely assesses the differences to try to determine the likely source to whatever extent possible, and to use information about the ways that the estimates and census differed from one another to inform methodological choice and research in the years after the census. Although we have a lot of confidence in our methodology and the quality of our estimates, we recognize the importance of providing stakeholders with a mechanism for improving the estimates in justified instances. That mechanism is our Population Estimates Challenge Program, which provides general-purpose governmental units with the opportunity to challenge their official estimates by submitting additional data to the Census Bureau for evaluation. There were a total of 7 challenges that were accepted into the Vintage 2022 population estimates. They were Chicago, Illinois, Berlin, Massachusetts, Detroit, Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Bernalillo, New Mexico, Garland, Texas, and Cottonwood Heights, Utah. Challenge results for Vintage 2023 have not yet been published since we are actually in the process of evaluating them. The most recent challenge period was for Vintage 2023 sub-county level population estimates, which completed on August 14, 2024. In June, my area released the final set of estimates from the Vintage 2023 Estimates series, which included population estimates by demographic characteristics for the nation, states, metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas, counties, and the Puerto Rico Commonwealth and its municipios. The estimates are available on the web page listed at the bottom of the screen. PEP releases estimates on a rolling basis, beginning in December and ending in June of the following year. This table shows our Vintage 2024 estimates release schedule by type of product. The first Vintage 2024 estimates will be released in December 2024. The estimates will include population totals, components of change, and voting age population for the nation, states, and Puerto Rico. Then, in March 2025, the release will include population totals and components of change for counties, metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas, and Puerto Rico municipios. The Vintage 2024 release in April is a data set with characteristics by single year of age and sex for the US only. In May, we will release total population for cities and towns and total housing units for the nation, states, and counties. And finally, in June, we will release population estimates by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin for the nation, states, metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas and counties, and by age and sex for Puerto Rico and its municipios. Please note that release dates are subject to change. PEP caters to a variety of data users with unique needs, so we have a variety of data access tools. The PEP web page is the primary way to access all of PEP's estimates products. For now, all estimates are given in Excel tables as well as comma-separated value or CSV data sets on the PEP website. In addition, PEP estimates are also available on QuickFacts. QuickFacts is a quick, easy way to access facts about people, business, and geography. QuickFacts provides statistics for all states, counties, and for cities and towns with a population of 5,000 or more. It's great for making quick comparisons for areas. It includes data from the ACS, PEP, and other Census Bureau programs. Historical PEP estimates are also available on the Application Programming Interface, or API. It lets developers create custom apps to reach new users and makes key demographic, socioeconomic, and housing statistics more accessible than ever before. PEP estimates on the API extend back to 1990. In December 2021, we were able to release Vintage 2021 total population estimates for the nation and states on data.census.gov and the API. We continue to collaborate with the Census Bureau's Center for Enterprise Dissemination to post additional estimates products here. Additional content will be released on the API when we restart releases on data.census.gov. Now, let's switch gears and take a look at our projections. What do we mean by the term population projections? Where population estimates apply to prior dates, population projections are for dates in the future. Therefore, they're based on assumptions we make about future demographic trends. We typically base a set of projections on the latest population estimates. At present, the Census Bureau produces only national-level population projections. State-level projections may be produced by each individual state. We do include links on our website to state sites that provide this data. We disseminate population projections for a few important reasons. While population projections are not legally mandated, they are useful for program planning in the public and private sectors and in academic and business research. Like the estimates, the method we use to make population projections is also a cohort component method. The base population is advanced each year using projected survival rates to project deaths and net international migration. Additionally, new birth cohorts are added to the population each year by applying projected age-specific fertility rates to the female population. Assumptions are made about future mortality, fertility, and international migration. The accuracy of projections is affected primarily by two things: the accuracy of the population which they are based upon, usually the most recent estimates, and the assumptions we make about future fertility, mortality, and international migration. It's interesting to look back at historical projections, comparing them to the current census and estimates. We typically base our assumptions on historical trends, but these trends have a way of changing over time. For example, demographers in the 1940s and 1950s did not anticipate the size and duration of the coming baby boom. And after that, they were also surprised by the baby bust that followed. In our latest set of projections, our assumptions focus primarily on the effects of COVID-19 on each component. In recent times, we've disseminated population projections only at the national level. The projections are annual and begin with the most recent estimates available at the time of projections production. Last fall, on November 9th, we released our latest series extending to 2100 and included detail for total population, births, deaths, and net international migration, and characteristics by single year of age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, and nativity, that is, the native and foreign-born populations. Unlike the estimates, the population projections are released on an irregular basis. Again, the latest set of projections was released in November 2023, and the release included a main series from 2023 to 2100, which reflects middle range assumptions about fertility, mortality, and international migration. It included 3 additional alternative national projection scenarios to 2100. It reflected the same assumptions about fertility and mortality as in the previous release from 2017, but it employed different assumptions about immigration, a high, a low, and a zero series. The new release updated the last series of projections published in 2017 to account for the impacts of COVID-19 and to reflect the results of the 2020 decennial census through its inclusion of the vintage 2022 national population estimates as a base. It also extends the population projections out to 2100 by select demographic characteristics. The methods are largely the same as the 2017 series, but the data sources have all been updated to reflect recent trends. The release includes a main series of projections considered the most likely outcome, along with 3 alternative scenarios that show how the population would change under high, low, and zero immigration assumptions or scenarios. Again, the release included information on projected changes in the total population, as well as the population by age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, and nativity. Moving forward, our hope is to produce projections on a more regular release schedule, which will allow us to be more responsive to demographic trends. This is our population projections webpage. The URL is listed at the bottom of the screen. It contains the latest projections series along with other historical projections releases. You can find summary tables, detailed data sets, and some useful reports. I have only scratched the surface in my overview of Census Bureau estimates and projections today. If you have questions about population and housing unit estimates or about population projections, this slide and the next 2 slides provide information for subject matter experts in our program area who can assist you. My branch is listed first with our contact information. But if you have a detailed question we can't answer, we can put you in touch with our colleagues who can help. I have listed their areas of expertise. My branch is the Coordination, Dissemination, and Outreach branch. We can help with questions of our catalog of estimates and projections products, our product release schedule, special tabulations, website questions, and FSCPP contact. Our population estimates branch can answer questions about estimates of total population and components of change, estimates of population by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, estimates of military population, estimates for Puerto Rico, and estimates of group quarters population. Our local government estimates and migration processing branch can answer questions related to estimates of population for sub-county places, cities and towns, estimates of housing units, estimates of domestic migration totals and by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, population estimates challenge program, special census results incorporation into the estimates, and research to improve the methods used to produce the above-mentioned estimate. The Population Evaluation, Analysis, and Projection branch can answer questions related to projections of population and components of change for the U.S., demographic analysis, evaluation estimates and modified race research, and estimates of births and deaths. The International Migration Branch can address questions related to annual estimates of migration to and from the U.S., net international migration component for the population estimates, estimates of migrant population by age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, and international migration research and evaluation. And our base evaluation and research team can answer questions related to changes and improvement to the estimates base and the feasibility of taking coverage measures from the 2020 demographic analysis, 2020 post-enumeration survey, and other administrative records into account in the development of the official populations. That brings me to the end of my portion of the presentation. So I'm going to hand things over to Lacey for a demo of where to find PEP data.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, everybody who joined us today. We're excited to have you here. Hopefully you can all see my screen. I'm going to walk you through just two places that are really quick and easy ways to get the data that Pam was just speaking about. So she's mentioned both of these. Okay, she mentioned both of these, and we're just going to do a quick walkthrough. The first one is Quick Facts. This is one of the Census Bureau's most simple tools, but at the same time has a lot of great data that's being pulled from different areas. So it's a really great way to pull information from different program areas, produce it in one nice product, and get a quick and easy overview of where you live or the area that you're looking to understand. In this top left corner, it'll tell you exactly what you can look for. So we have state, county, cities, towns, or zip codes. And you can start typing in where you live or where you're looking. I live in Leander, Texas, which is just north of Austin. I like to use it as an example because it is the only Leander that pops up. Depending on where you live, if you live in a place that has Jackson in the name, you'll have a long list. I would just caution you to make sure that you are choosing the one that specifically associates with your particular location. So Leander City, Texas. And you'll see it automatically populates here. So it started with information about the entire nation, and then the city is added here. You can add up to 6 geographies total, so you can produce a table that has up to 6 geographies. We're going to keep it simple today just to walk through this. But you'll see we have 2 selections on the table here. If you do want to select a specific fact, we're going to walk through these, then you can do a little bit of charting or graphing of that particular data point. But first, let's just take a look at what is here. So at the very top, we have population estimates. So I know that you guys have been listening to a lot of information about that. This is as July 1st of 2023. We have age and sex information, information on race and Hispanic origin, population characteristics, housing, families, living arrangements, computer and internet use, education, health, and economy. We also have transportation, income and poverty, and business information. At the very bottom here, we have a geographic summary, and this is actually one of the most useful places to come if you want basic information about a specific geography. This is definitely the easiest way to find some of those quick numbers. The other thing I love about this tool is each of these little info circles, when you click on them, it'll tell you exactly where this data came from. So especially if you're emailing this to someone or you're handing it off, you don't have to memorize what these different data sources are. You can simply just send it to them electronically, and then they can click on the information icon here and find out whatever they need to know. Back up at the top, you can choose a fact. This is literally just the same list of rows that we have in the table. But if you want to choose, let's say we want to understand people that are under the age of 5, it'll highlight that. It'll pull it up here. So in Leander, we have 7.3% of the population is under the age of 5, and in the United States, it's 5.5. But this is where you can also use our chart icon here. You could certainly do for the United States, and you can do it for the specific geography you've chosen as well. But let's go to the United States, and it will pull up geography. It'll pull up other areas within the geography. So in this case, it'll be state because we were starting with the nation, and tell you the percentage of the population that falls under that 5-year mark. So really quick, really easy, a really simple way to show some basic information about the area that you live in, and an easy way to compare to other geographies that you wanted to look at as well. Under More, you can print this. It actually makes a really nice handout if you ever are in need of a physical handout. You can also download it as a CSV, or you can email it. And again, if you email it, it's a great way for people to just be able to explore some of this on their own. You can certainly add or subtract different geographies at that point too. Okay, the second one that Pam mentioned, the Population and Housing Unit Estimates has a web page that's actually really easy to navigate. So I'll just do a quick overview here, and then we'll take questions. But this is really your one-stop shop for all of the data, well, most of the data that was discussed today. So first, you'll have your featured. This will, come up with some of the most recent releases that we've had within this program. But if you're really looking for all of the data that was just discussed, you're going to look over here in this left-hand menu. So there's information about the program. Then we have data. This is where we'll actually go in just a second to actually look at the data that's available. Information on geographies. If you are looking to really understand the geographies that this data is available for, this is a great resource. Then guidance for data users and geography users. Libraries has a lot of different infographics and different products that we've made over the past couple of years. And then news and technical documentation if you ever really want to get into the really specifics of this information. Let's focus on data, since that's probably why most of you are here. We have the Population Housing Unit Estimates data sets. Here's tables. Data tool, this one will lead you to a international tool. Here's notes, and then here's special tabulation programs. I spend most of my time right here in the Population and Housing Unit Estimate tables. So I'll take you here. This is an easy way to download something into an Excel file. It's just one of the most easy ways to view the data from these programs. First up, we'll have city and town populations. Then it's broken down by county, then characteristics, metropolitan and micropolitan areas. Then we have national populations, national population characteristics, and then Puerto Rico Commonwealth population totals as well. I'm going to stick to simple. I'm going to go to counties. If you click here, it'll take you to 3 products that you can look at, which really show a comparison over time. But you can also just look at the states. So let's say that as I just mentioned, I'm in Texas, and I want to see the population estimates for counties in Texas. Simply click on Texas. Depending on your settings, your download will pop up. And then you get a really nice, really easy to read and scroll through Excel file. So this has all of the counties within the area I chose, which happened to be Texas, listed in alphabetical order. Here are the estimates based for 2020 and then 2021, 22, 23. So you can see how the population has changed over time for any of these counties. The tables for the cities look exactly the same as well. It'll be in alphabetical order as well if you choose your state. But a really quick and easy way, and these are the most up-to-date data that is produced by this program. With that, Pam, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we can take questions on any of the content you just shared with us, or any questions about the data tools as well.
Okay, thanks, Lacey. We can open it up for questions.
Yes, hi. So one question that came in is if you could let us know, is homeless included in this survey, and also homeless clinic as well? That's one of the questions.
The homeless population is picked up in a couple ways in our estimates. We pick them up with our group orders data. So that's picked up through the 2020 census. So our base population picks them up through the group quarters. And then our group quarters data is updated annually through our partners from the states, the Federal State Cooperative for Population Estimates. And they'll give us updates on how that population is changing. So we'll track that change over time. But that depends on states' participation. So some states participate and some states don't. So the level of participation changes and varies over depending. But we try to estimate the group orders in the homeless population as best we can. We don't have a specific estimate for the homeless population that you can go find. This is the homeless population, but they are included in the estimate that we produce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Andrew here. Lacey, there was a question regarding how you got to the extended data frame, as well as from Gary, about learning more about how to use DApps to produce projections at the county level.
Can you repeat that, Andrew? You're saying that was for me?
It was from Deborah. I'm not sure if it was on your demo, but how to get the extended data frame from Deborah. I'm not sure, Deborah, if you could expand on that question. And from Gary, about using DApps, D-A-P-P-S, to produce projections at the county level.
So speaking to producing projections, that's going to be our SMEs on the line. So I'll turn that back over to you guys.
DApps is produced by our international programs area. And I don't know if we have anybody here that is from international programs, but we can certainly connect you with them. But that's something that we would, if they're not here, we would have to, refer you to international programs.
One last question for our SMEs. What is the process and deadline for a city to ask the Bureau to relook at their population estimate?
So we release our estimates on a rolling basis over the year. And there's usually a window of time after we release our estimate where you can challenge the data. I believe, Yesenia, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 90 days where you can challenge your data. So you can basically challenge your data 3 months out from when the data was released. And there's some criteria, there's whole directions, there's a whole set of directions on our website of the criteria, the timeline, what you have to submit, everything like that on our website. But it depends on the release and what you're challenging. So if you're challenging our state totals and our birth and death estimates, which is released in March, then you're dealing with a different deadline than if you're challenging our sub-county estimates, which are released in May. So it really depends on the data you're challenging, and your date of the deadline would revolve around that. So I would ask you to refer to our website, our challenge website, which we have. Hopefully somebody can put that in the chat, and you can find all the relevant information there, just in case I misspoke. But yeah, everything should be there in all the relevant information.
Also, Luke, if you are able to address from, you scroll back up, it was from Elena regarding the difference between the net immigration estimates from the census and the CBO in the past few years. There's been a 6 million, I believe, difference in a 21 to 23 projection. Could you explain the drivers of that difference and how to reconcile it?
I don't know if there's a way to reconcile it, but there's definitely a methodological difference there. The CBO estimates, they definitely use a different method of a different data set, and they're using encounters at the border from Homeland Security. It's a completely different methodology than what we use. We're using ACS-based method, and ours, we know, is a bit lagged. And so it's a big research project on our end. And we have a blog forthcoming that will talk about these differences and the pros and cons of why we're sticking to our method, why we have confidence in our method, and why we're not so confident and switching over to the data that the CBO used. We think that there's substantial limitations to that data. So we're going to be releasing that blog in the near future. So we definitely can't reconcile them, but we are. Yeah, I mean the differences are stark, but we're definitely going to be using the ACS method moving forward. But we're researching ways to enhance our method to be more timely.
We have one other question, Luke, from Victoria. They're curious about the specific methodologies that was used to project mortality and fertility. Could you explain how you manage the different levels of aggregation?
I don't know. I wonder if they could be more specific, because that's like aggregation in what way? We definitely, you know, the method of mortality and fertility projections in our methodology, you know, we do nativity, we do a certain subset of race categories, but it's, you know, there's a logic behind it, but I don't know what their specific question is.
And Luke, one from Jin, in the 2023 PEP data, which date of the city's boundary did you use?
In the 2023 data, we're always sticking to the April 1st, 2023 boundary. Well, January 1st, 2023. So we update our boundaries every year. So we're, as of January 1st, 2023, we get our boundary updates, and then we update all of our estimates for those boundaries. And then we have to rerun our estimates for the new boundary changes. As for the mortality and fertility changes, if you have a question, I'm happy to refer you to our population projections expert. He's having some mic difficulties, but we're happy to refer you to him, and he can answer any questions you have, as technical as you want to go. But yeah, he would be the one to answer any questions you have. Just let us know.
And just from Dustin, if you're able to address the accuracy of the projections, if there's been a historical analysis.
Historical analysis of the projections. I actually don't know. That's not something I've heard of. I was in the projections branch when I was an analyst, and I never heard of that.
And I can just jump in really quickly.
Sure.
There hasn't been any done, but if you do have questions about that topic or projections, you can reach out to Sandy Johnson. She's the chief of the projections branch, and her contact information is available near the end of Pam's slides, which will be made available at the end of this presentation.
And just to one last, I think we're arriving at our last question here from Victor. I don't believe Mac raised this, but it was, thank you for your enlightening presentation. I'm curious about the specific methodologies for projecting mortality, fertility. If this wasn't addressed, how, could you please explain how you manage the different levels of aggregation of mortality?
So this is similar to the other question. I would refer this to our projections branch. And that's something I would email us about, because these are kind of in the weeds, I think. So it'd probably be best to kick it over to the folks that created the projections. And I would definitely encourage them to email us.
So I would say that's the answer as well for Julie. How do you check to make sure the data is turned in by the states is accurate? So it's about validity. So Julie, if you could reach out just so we could.
So the data is turned in by the states. I can answer that one. So we have a memorandum of agreement with the states. We've been working with the states for decades, and we check their data when they submit it for time series patterns and all sorts of validity checks. And there's a certain level of trust that we have with the states, that they have on the ground knowledge of what's going on in their states. And these are, state partners that are, these are people that are trusted by their own state to have, data knowledge of what's going on. So their state trusts them, we trust them. And so when they submit data to us, we take the data on faith and we just check it for some time series. We do basic checks on it, and we really take it as is for the most part, and then we ingest it into our methodology. But we really trust our state partners. We think that they're producing quality data, and when they give it to us, it's really high quality data. And that's just part of the relationship that we have with the states. So that's just something part of that relationship that we have with our state partners.
Thank you, everyone. Those were great questions. And again, any questions that were addressed or were not addressed at this time will be available for posting 30 days after on our Census Academy site. Again, thank you, Pam and Lacey, for this informative presentation and our data tutorial. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank our audience for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. Again, please check out the Census Academy for additional training resources and to register for upcoming webinars. That brings us to a close. We thank you again for joining us today and hope you have a great afternoon.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.